So if you'd like to start by settling yourself into a comfortable position for yourself in meditation, closing your eyes very gently, in much the same way you might close your eyes to go to sleep. Slowing yourself down and relaxing by taking a few deep breaths to yourself. Breathing in the cool, refreshing air from around you. And breathing slowly and smoothly out again. Once again, breathing to the full extent of your lungs. And as you breathe out, you may feel that you're letting go of any previous worries or concerns you may have had. From there, we do our normal pre-flight check to make sure our body is properly relaxed for the meditation ahead. And this involves scanning down through the whole of our body to make sure each and every muscle of our body is properly relaxed. So relaxing our forehead, releasing any tension in the muscles there, and relaxing our eyebrows and our eyelids. Taking care that the way we've closed our eyes is as gentle as possible, because there's no need to squeeze our eyes tightly shut. It's only necessary to close our eyes to the point where our upper and lower eyelashes touch gently together. And we allow the muscles of our face to become soft, relaxing our jaw, taking care not to clench our teeth together, and avoiding even pursing our lips. From there, we relax the muscles of our neck. And if our shoulders are tense, we allow them to drop to their natural height. From there, we relax both arms, our forearms, and eventually our hands and fingers. So that the way our hands rest in our lap is as light as possible. We continue by relaxing all the muscles in our torso, relaxing our chest, trunk, and eventually the whole of our abdomen. We take particular care to relax the muscles across our stomach. Then we relax both legs all the way down to our feet and our toes. Until eventually all the way from the top of our head, right the way down to the tips of our toes. We'll feel satisfied that there's no remaining part of our body with any sort of stress or tension anymore. If we do notice places where tension still seems to linger on, we do our best to relax it as far as possible. And it should leave us with a sense that our whole body is something we can forget about, or as if it seems to melt away into the atmosphere around us, allowing us to turn our attention instead to the feeling inside us, a sense of warmth and well-being, or a sense of inner space. And even this feeling on the inside is something we can relax further if we're able to let go for a few moments of all the normal worries and concerns we associate with our everyday life. For all the urgent things in our lives, we try to put them on one side for now. Perhaps with a promise to ourselves that we can come back to think about them at a later time. We try not to dwell on any regrets from our past, also avoiding the temptation to make plans for the future. So we remain very much in the here and now, as the present moment is the only place that we can really make a difference in our life. So we try to focus on the task in hand, gathering our attention back from any possible distractions in the outside world to a place of peace and serenity that lies inside us. Generally, the best place is somewhere around the area of our stomach. And by maintaining our attention inside us, it will help our mind to absorb the positive energies of the inner world. At the same time, although we may be aware of what's going on around us, we'll find that what's on the outside doesn't actually perturb our mind anymore. Instead, our mind absorbs the positive qualities from the inside, a sense of happiness and joy, as if our whole mind were filled with tiny particles of happiness and joy, which will grow and spread inside us until they completely fill the whole of our body and mind. And when we feel relaxed and refreshed, both in body and in mind, very gently and using no effort at all, we imagine that inside our body is nothing but an empty space or a hollow cavity, without any organs or tissues, without any muscles or bones. Or some people may prefer to imagine their body as being like a transparent bubble, with nothing on the inside. Others who've been meditating longer may have more of a sense that their body has disappeared completely. And meditating is rather like inhabiting a great empty space of our own creation. Well, whatever your experience of the inner space, allow the focus of your attention to drift slowly downwards on the midline of your body, drifting downwards until it seems to come to rest somewhere in the area of your stomach. In the ideal world, of course, the place will be the seventh base of the mind, or the center of the body that we've heard about in previous meditations. But in practice, we tend to use our feeling to tell us the correct place. Because if it feels right, then it generally is right. For some people, simply bringing the mind into place will already give rise to inner experience, which they can then adopt as the object of their meditation. If this is the case for you, then any inner imagery or inner feeling can already form the focus for our attention. And our brief in the meditation will be simply to observe the way that inner experience transforms further. However, if you are newer to the meditation practice, or if you're still in doubt about the exact position of the center of the body, it may be necessary to conjure up some sort of inner object of your own as a starting point for the mind. Such an inner object may be something you can feel, or it may be something that you can see. An example of something you can feel may be like an invisible fruit, the presence of which you can feel at the center of your body, maybe like a grape or a small nectarine, with a certain weight and texture, a certain size and temperature, resting at the center of our body and acting like an anchor for the mind. If you're more into a visual practice, then it may be like a picture of the sun shining with a bright, clear light, not particularly mattering whether the picture is in focus. Even if it's vague, then we can accept it anyway. If we do find that our attention is distracted away by other things, each time we realize, we simply bring the attention back again to the center of the body. And if we're new to meditation, then we may need to persevere with bringing the mind back repeatedly. But each time we do bring the mind back to the center, it will become a little bit easier to keep it there the next time round. If the mind wanders, then we bring it back. If the object disappears, we can conjure up a new one. And if the object transforms, instead of changing it back, we just follow it in its new form. And as for the problem of there being an excess of thought in the mind, if you find that that is the case for you, then you may be able to reduce the number of thoughts by simply ignoring them, by starving them of attention. But if the number of thoughts in the mind is really too many simply to ignore, it may be necessary to return to our good friend, the mantra, hearing the sound of the words Samma Arahang, coming up from the center of the body or from the center of that inner object, almost like a silent music. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently and continuously, helping to keep our mind on track at the center, but also reducing the number of thoughts in the mind down to a manageable level, until we reach a point where the mind seems to have settled into silence. We maintain our mind in place with the utmost of gentleness, never rushing the process, never trying to force our hand. And we continue in this way for a few more moments now in silence, until we come to the appropriate time. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently and continuously, helping to keep the mind on track at the center of the body, while at the same time reducing down the number of thoughts in the mind to a manageable level, eventually to a point where only silence remains in the mind. In the meantime, the mind continues to focus on the inner object that we have chosen for ourselves. If we find our attention wandering away onto other things, each time we realize, we bring our attention back again. If the object disappears, we can think of a new one. If it changes, we just follow it in its new form. If we feel uncomfortable, we can try changing or adjusting our position. But we try to do so in a way that neither perturbs the state of mind inside ourselves that we've built up for ourselves, while at the same time not disturbing the people around us. We continue to keep our mind on track in this way for a few more moments in silence, lightly and gently, continuously at the center of our body, for a few more moments now in silence. continue to maintain our attention at the center of the body the whole of the time. At the center of whatever inner experience we've built up for ourselves as a result of the meditation so far this evening. For some people, the inner experience will amount to a sense of inner brightness, in which case we can place our attention at the center of that brightness very gently, in a way that allows the brightness to spread outwards from the central point. Others, for whom the meditation is something more like an inner feeling, may find that they can place their attention very gently at the center of that feeling of well-being, in a way that allows the inner feeling to become larger in size, spreading outwards again from the central point. For others still, it may be some sort of inner picture, and in the same way we can place our attention very gently at the center of the picture, in a way that allows the picture to become larger in size, spreading outwards. This process of allowing the inner experience to expand is known as the spreading of loving kindness. Initially, we allow the inner experience to extend in this way until it fills the whole of our own body, making the wish at the center of ourselves that may we be well and happy, free from all suffering. And again, from our center, but extending the loving kindness outwards, beyond ourselves, we allow the loving kindness to spread outwards to fill the whole of the meditation hall. Further still outwards to the whole of the meditation center, while at the same time making the wish at the center of ourselves that may all living beings in the meditation center be touched by our loving kindness, that those living beings may be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony. And again from our center, but extending our loving kindness further still. If it's easier, we can imagine spreading loving kindness across a map, seen in bird's eye view. We can extend our loving kindness outwards to the whole neighborhood, further outwards to the whole city, in all directions all around, like a halo or an aura, extending outwards so that it reaches all the living beings in this city, with a wish that may all these living beings be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony. Extending loving kindness outwards to the whole county, the whole country, and eventually to neighboring countries, and to the whole continent, with the wish that all living beings be touched by our loving kindness, and all these living beings may be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony. We extend our loving kindness further still to all the continents of the world, so that our loving kindness extends across the entire face of this planet, with the wish that all living beings, whether on the land, in the air, or in the sea, be touched by our loving kindness, that all those living beings may be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony, and true peace may prevail on our planet within the space of our own lifetimes. We can extend loving kindness further outwards into the universe around in all the 6 great directions. Extending loving kindness in the forward direction. Extending loving kindness behind us. Extending loving kindness to our left. And extending loving kindness to our right. Extending loving kindness above us. And extending loving kindness below. Extending loving kindness without bounds or limits, until it becomes a sort of universal love, reaching everywhere in the universe, touching all living beings without exception, again with the wish that all living beings be well and happy, free from suffering, live together in peace and harmony. We can also extend loving kindness to particular loved ones, towards those for whom we feel a sense of gratitude, towards those who are still alive, or to those who have already passed. We can extend loving kindness in this way for the last few moments of our meditation practice together until we come to the appropriate time. สัพเพพุทธาภลปัฏฐาปัจเจกานัญชยามพลังอรหันธานัญจเตเจนะอระคัมบันดามิสัพพโสสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสธีภะวันตุเท So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for this evening, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gradually finishing your practice. So far, so good, everyone. Meditation wasn't too long for you. Just right. Well, I believe as a Thursday group, you have earned yourself a 10-minute break. And when you're ready, about 8 o'clock, then we'll pick up again with the subject matter for this evening, which is about setting ourselves up properly in life.
We have a bottle of water if you want. It's over there. Okay.
I think everyone's pretty much out of practice with socializing, right? Still haven't quite got round to the reverse culture shock yet. Okay, so today is the second part of what is entitled Blessing Number 6, to do with setting oneself up properly in life. I think it's actually 2 weeks since I gave the first part of this, but where we are to give the sort of overview for what I've been doing on this series is talking about a Buddhist teaching called the Mangala Sutta, which consists of 38 values or character strengths, you could call them, which are sequential, which you build upon little by little, going from fairly obvious ones to much more esoteric or transcendental ones. And the idea is that wherever you jump in on this sort of spiritual staircase, then it will lead you to the next one in the sequence. So if you start at the bottom, then you work yourself up rung by rung, step by step. And there are 38 steps, but they are divided into 10 different categories. And the first category was to do with turning your back on unwholesomeness in your life. Those were the first 3 blessings. The next 3 blessings, which include this one, and this is the last in the second sort of section, is to do with turning towards wholesomeness or good habits in your life. So you've turned your back on bad habits, now you're turning towards the good habits to lay the foundations for spiritual work. And the ones that preceded this were to do with, firstly, having a good environment, an encouraging environment in your surroundings, to do with being in an amenable or a conducive location. So that is the nurture side of turning towards good habits in life. The last blessing we looked at was to do with having a lot of good deeds in one's past. So that's to do with more the nature side. So it's what you bring to the table, what you bring to the equation in terms of your past good deeds. And this time having the power of both our environment and our innate sort of virtues, we now need to give them some direction. And this is what is meant by having setting oneself up properly in life. Often it's to do with a sense of having a good sense of purpose or a direction or a focus in one's life, which is to lead all those energies, positive energies that you built up for yourself, and actually channel them in a positive direction. And what I talked about last time is that any sort of aim in life or spiritual direction that is likely to be comprehensive should have 3 aspects to it, almost like 3 different levels to our perspective or a sense of direction in life. The first you might refer to as your worldly aim in life, which is to do with making sure you can stand on your own 2 feet financially especially, and not have to be a burden on other people. The second level, the spiritual level, is to do with cultivating the sort of character qualities that might stay with you even beyond the grave. And the last one is to do, the transcendental level is to do with breaking free from the cycle of existence, the cycle of samsara and suffering completely. And if you want to put them in a more sort of Buddhist vocabulary, you might refer to the worldly level as the world-bound level. The spiritual level, you might call it the heaven-bound level, so it's your sort of, will convey you to heaven realms. But as you may know, heaven isn't the idea of the ultimate destination in Buddhism. We would hope to aim higher than that, which is to break free from the whole system completely, even heaven realms. And the last one, the transcendental level, you might call it the unbound level, because you can break free completely of the whole shebang. So today what we are left with to look at is if we have some idea of what we might aim towards, the sort of ambitions that we might have in our lives, how can we know that we're not going to take too much upon ourselves? How can we be sure that we're not going to sort of adopt all those New Year's resolutions and then do none of them and like feel bad about ourselves for being a sort of a total failure or whatever? How can we get it just right so that we can aim for something which we can then go on to achieve? And in this respect, I would like to introduce you to what you might call clarifying virtues, which are things which help you to think about your own potential for how much of this spiritual work is it realistic for you to take upon yourself at a level where you can really see some progress for yourself. So what are these 7? Let's have a look at them. The first is your level of inspiration. And these 7, sometimes they're referred to in Buddhism, when there are 5 of them at least, as core virtues or sara dhamma. Other places they are referred to more numerously as the in the Vati Sutta, for example, of the Anguttara Nikaya. But if you have an idea of evaluating yourself in terms of these 7 virtues, then you will have an idea about just how ambitious you can afford to be about your aim in life, given that not everyone is equal in these respects. It's not just down to your time available or your level of education. It's down to a lot more to do with the true grit which you have to bring to this this task of spiritual transformation. So inspiration, sometimes it's referred to as faith, although that tends to be rather confusing in our Western context, or confidence, or self-confidence. But in the Pali, it would be the word sattha. So you need to believe in what you're doing, basically. Means that the good thing, you believe that the good work or the good deeds which you're doing will really have a transformative effect in your life. For example, if you want to train to be a doctor, but you don't really believe in the value of modern medicine, then maybe you'd be better off doing something else that you do generally believe in. Otherwise, it's like you're not doing it wholeheartedly. Therefore, your potential to really make a change in the world would be compromised by the fact you don't believe in what you're doing. So let's say you're this doctor and you don't believe in it, then maybe you'd be better off doing something you did believe in. And then you would see it through to completion much more easily. If you were aiming to meditate, for example, and you realize you're low on inspiration, then you might try to become part of a meditation group, because then you see other people who have inspiration and it helps to inspire you as well. So it's like knowing your own weaknesses. Yeah. Second thing is your level of integrity. In the Buddhist context, generally this would refer to one's ability to keep 5 precepts to your satisfaction. If you think about a person who hopes to have a career in politics, integrity is very important, because you're expected to be not just a smart or savvy person, but you're also supposed to be a good example to others as well. And when people maybe they don't like your message too much, but they can't fault it, then they try to fault you instead. And if they can sort of find any chinks in your armor in terms of integrity, then you're a very easy person to compromise. So integrity means that if you have more of it, then you can afford to be more in the public eye, for example, in terms of the things that you do. Third quality, which we'll learn more about later, is to do with knowledge and experience, how much learning you have under your belt. In the Buddhist context, this would be known as the Bahu Sutta, or one who has heard much. Generally, it means that if you have a lot of experience and learning, then you come across new experiences. There's not much that surprises you anymore. So you're prepared for pretty much anything you come across. The fourth quality is generosity, or the ability to let go of things, what would be known as chaka in the Pali language. Generally, any person who is working for something larger than themselves, some larger aim than just their own personal or selfish interest, needs to be a person who can sacrifice of themselves. The more they are prepared to sacrifice, then the more they can do for others. If a person is very selfish, then they can do things for others, but it's probably rather limited. The person who's really able to give of themselves, who doesn't hold back in that respect, generally would be a person who would be expected to be able to achieve more in terms of an ambitious sort of aim in life, to help society or help the people around them, let's say. Fifth quality is known as wisdom, and I think you probably have heard from me before about the difference between mere knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is what you get generally at school, and you transform that into transferable skills, and then you can get a job. But wisdom is more to do with the sense of being able to solve problems at their roots. Often it's more to do with intuition, and definitely it comes from within rather than from textbooks. So it tends to be self-knowledge or knowledge of a spiritual nature. Sixth quality, quick-wittedness, being able to think on your toes. If you are more well endowed in this department, then you can probably take quite a lot on, because you don't need much preparation beforehand. If you reckon you're a smart person and you're also quick-witted, then maybe you can appear on a radio show and take live questions. But if you are just smart and not that quick-witted, then maybe you can go away and write articles and not have any contact address. Yeah. If you don't have this, then you can get better at it by rehearsing. But it takes time. Some people have a knack for this sort of thing, being able to think on their feet. And last but not least, often it's missed off the lists you see in the scriptures, but also it's something to bear in mind, which is generally you can tend to take more upon yourself if you are healthy. If you are your health is rather tenuous, then sometimes you need to attend to that before you can attend to more ambitious tasks. So sometimes it's suggested that if you are serious about establishing a proper aim in life, then you ought to, when you look at the mirror each morning, reflect on yourself, not just as whether you look handsome or beautiful or tall or short or whatever, but you should reflect deeper than that on the personal qualities which you have and whether those are becoming stronger as the day goes on, or as you go through life, in a way that would allow you to become more ambitious in your personal sense of direction in life. So, what about these people who are able to reach towards this unbound or transcendental level? Does everyone manage to get there? Well, in Buddhism, there's a belief that one way or another, eventually everyone will get there. But for some, it may take longer than others to be able to break free from the cycle of existence. But there are certain preconditions which help us in that direction, especially having been established in the fourth and fifth blessings, which we have already studied, which means being in an amenable location, being surrounded by supportive people, encouraging people, people who encourage us to transform spiritually in a good sense. Also, if we have a lot of good deeds in our past, so blessing number 5, then life tends to have less obstacles as we try to achieve the things that we have aimed for. But there are also other things, apart from getting our ducks in a row, that can speed the results from our efforts. And these are known as the 4 accomplishments. They're also sometimes talked about as being the reason why sometimes if you do something good, you don't see the results of it coming back very quickly. There's often a delay involved. Like, so you sort of, you let someone cut it in front of you in the traffic, let's say, and it takes a long time for someone else to allow you to do the same. Why is it that it takes so long? And in Buddhism, this sort of delay is sometimes known as a lack of accomplishments or catalysts in our lives. And there are 6 of these. I think it mentions 4 there, but first 2 are immutable location and good deeds. The remaining 4 are catalytic circumstances, which means being in a supportive environment. Catalytic timing means being born at a time when there's a lot of people who are very high-minded around in that particular day and age. For example, people who were born in the time of the Buddha seem to have a much easier time of getting enlightened, for example, almost because his presence seems to have helped them in some sense. Catalytic location means probably being in a country or a place where at least practice of things like meditation is encouraged or at least allowed. You can imagine there's some places in the world where that would be particularly hard. Notice some place like Saudi Arabia, they don't even let monks in, let alone people with Buddha tattoos or Buddhist amulets and that sort of thing. It must be pretty hard to get the knowledge at all. And catalytic well-being catalytic well-being to do with your sense of health and well-being. Catalytic view to do with having a very clear appreciation of, or an accurate worldview, usually a worldview that encourages self-development. So feeling that you believe in the possibility of change for the better. So if you have all the 4 blessings, 4 and 5, together with these accomplishments, then you will be able to achieve sort of escape velocity, you might call it, on the things that you aim for and hope to achieve to improve your life, especially on the transcendental level. So sometimes in Buddhism, we see our aim in life as reaching across lifetimes. And talking about a heavenly aim in life would mean that one would hope that having lived in the human realm, at the end of one's life, one goes to heaven. Which sounds a bit like sort of Judeo-Christian religions, right? But in Buddhism, like, heaven's not permanent. So after some time in a heaven realm, then you end up back where you started again, having enjoyed sort of a nice rest. So our human realm in this particular diagram would be represented by the bell-shaped at the middle of the pagoda. So this pagoda is a sort of model of the Buddhist cosmos in this particular case. Not all pagodas are like that, but this particular one shows this in a symbolic form. The heaven realms would be above the bell shape. So the fortunate realms there, you can see especially 6 heaven realms, and then above that another 16 plus 4 what are known as Brahma realms, and on the very top, Nirvana. Downstairs, so down from the bell, are what are known as the unfortunate realms, which is a sort of politically correct way of saying hell realms. And it is believed in Buddhism that people end up in the human realm from many different origins, or at least 2 different origins. Some come from a bad place and end up in the human realm. Some come from a good place, so heaven realms, and also end up in the human realm. So people bring different backgrounds to their human existence. Also, at the end of their life, then they might go to a good place, or they might go to a bad place. So there's 4 different possibilities for where people can come from and where people might be going, depending on what they decide to do with their time in the human realm. Now see the point of talking about setting oneself up properly in life, in order to have the right spin on your journey through the human realm. The first of these is what's known as out of the darkness and into the light. I hope. Let's see. No, I think we want this one. Out of the darkness into the light, which in this particular case would be a person who has come from a lot of bad experiences as a result of their own mistakes and bad choices in the past. They end up in the human realm, possibly quite badly affected by their previous demons. But they manage to turn it around during their human lifetime in order to go to a better place at the end of their life. So out of the darkness into the light. The opposite is out of the light and into the darkness. Some people turn up in the human realm with all the advantages, but they're complacent about their advantages. And they make a real mess of their lives, and at the end of their lives they go to a bad place. So, off the top of my head, I might say things like children of famous parents just sort of ride on their parents' fame and maybe goodness, but they don't do anything themselves, and they often are the biggest troublemakers of all. Yeah? So also not good. So last one was all right, but it's better not to have come into the human realm with the disadvantage in the first place. Complete failure is people who come from a bad place and end up going back where they came from. This tends to be quite common because people who have disadvantages tend to find the demons of their past pulling them back into the same old patterns again. So again, this is not the sort of plan for life that would be considered very sensible. But one which is recommended is to come from a good place and go to an even better place. So that the time spent in the human realm is to take what advantages you have, the good deeds that you've done in the past, but build upon them further so that the energy and the power of the goodness which you have will project you to an even better place in the future. And the purpose of all we've been talking about in terms of trying to find things to further the goodness of character and values that we have in our lives in the course of our short lifetimes to make them better would help us to come from a good place but to go to an even better place as a result of the time we spend in this world. So this would be the ideal outcome of setting oneself up properly in life with the 3 different levels which I had talked about this time briefly and last time in more detail. So I'll end with a story today. It's a story about a person with anger issues. Here's the guy. As you may be aware, Buddhism wasn't the only religion in India during the time of the Buddha. Can you tell me some other religions that were around in India at the time? Hindus and? Well, Brahmanism is Hinduism, but of Hinduism in that time, and also Jainism you would have heard of. There's a lot of other ones, but mostly they are defunct by this stage in history. So, Mr. Bharatavacha was in fact a member of a clan of Brahmins, so hereditary Brahmins. They observed Buddhism. Often the people who they looked up to would be Brahmins or naked ascetics rather than monks. And the Buddha was often seen as almost like a competitor because Brahmanism had been around for many thousand years already, and this like newfangled Buddhism had come along. So there was a Brahmin couple. The wife was called Dhananjani, and even though she was married, probably by arranged marriage, to this angry Brahmin, Mr. Bharatavacha, she had met up with the Buddha at one time, and had managed to meditate quite successfully with the Buddha to the point that she had attained stream entry. So stream entry is the first level of enlightenment, a point at which a person has the first sort of permanent change in the quality of mind. There's a permanent transformation which is achieved for the better as a result of this attainment. So although she still went about all her duties as a good Brahmin wife, but in her heart she was already enlightened on the first stage of Buddhist sainthood. And normally this didn't show very much, but she just went about her duties. But whenever she had a surprise, then she would exclaim the first thing that came into her head. And normally it would be something of a Buddhist nature. So the first thing that came into her head would be something Buddhist. And normally she would just, like she slipped over or something, she'd say, Buddho. Like some people these days say, oh my God, or whatever. She would say Buddha when she had a shock. So her husband was going to invite a whole lot of Hindu ascetics to their home to do a sort of housewarming ceremony. And he warned her in advance, don't you slip up today. Don't you exclaim anything Buddhist in front of all these sort of very venerable Hindu ascetics that are going to come to our home today. So she said, I can't guarantee it, because in my heart is, it's what the heart does, it's not something I have control of anymore. So the husband took that as a sort of agreement. But so he just threatened her and said, well, if you can't keep your mouth shut, then I'll take my sword and I will cut you into mincemeat. And she said, well, even if you do that, I still can't guarantee that I won't say anything about Buddha. She's very honest. So everything was going well. She'd been threatened into being quiet and whatever, and she came out and she served all the Hindu ascetics that had come to their home, and she did her duties as well as she could. But then, as the day went on, she slipped over on some rice that had fallen on the ground, which is very slippery. And when she slipped over, she didn't just say Buddho, she said Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, like the full chanting. And when all the Brahmins heard this chanting, they said, oh, your wife is masquerading as like a Brahmin, but like she knows all the chanting from Buddhism. This isn't right." And they're all very angry. And the ones that had finished their meal, they just stood up and left. And the ones that hadn't finished their meal, they just turned the plate of food over on the table and walked out. So the husband was like really angry about this. And he thought, threatening my wife with a sword isn't enough. I'm going to go and solve this problem at its root. I'm going to confront the teacher who has caused my wife to have these terrible manners in front of the Brahmin ascetics. So he marched up to the temple, and they weren't going to let him in because he looked like he was going to cause some problems. But the Buddha said, "Oh, let the guy in, I need to talk to him." So the guy came marching up to the front of the Buddha and pointed his finger at him, as you can see in the picture. And he asked a rhetorical question of the Buddha, which is, what does a man have to kill in order to get a good night's sleep? And probably the answer to this was kill the Buddha, so that he wouldn't have any more problems with his wife. But before the Buddha was able to answer this question, he continued his question. And what does a man have to kill to cure his sorrow? And still without waiting for an answer, the Brahmin asked the Buddha, and so what form of killing would you support? So the Buddha knew what was going on in the mind of the Brahmin, and he coolly answered the first questions with the words, "A man must kill his anger in order to get a good night's sleep. If you don't kill your anger, you will do things that you regret later. You'll be put in prison or you'll be punished. But if you kill your anger, then you don't need to undergo any of the sorrowful consequences of your angry deeds." So the noble ones praise the killing of anger, whose root is poison and whose crown is sweet. And when the Buddha said that the root of anger is poisonous, it means that anger has suffering as its result. But when he said his crown is sweet, it meant that we get a strange, twisted satisfaction out of expressing anger or losing our temper. It's like sort of satisfying. So just hearing these words already, Mr. Bharatavacha was impressed by the Buddha's demeanor and his reply. And he was so impressed that the Buddha was not angry in response to his anger, because he prepared to kill the Buddha if he said the wrong things. But instead, he didn't hear anything from the Buddha that would cause him to be further irritated. And he was impressed by the way the Buddha had reasoned with him. So immediately he threw down his weapons and invited the Buddha to teach him further. And in the end, he was motivated into ordaining as a monk, which probably pleased his wife very much. So in keeping with the topic of the talk tonight, putting an end to your anger is one way of setting yourself up properly in life. For as long as you're angry, then you're unable to see the path ahead of you in order to have a better trajectory through your life. So to ordain as a result of the teaching is to set yourself up in faith, set yourself up in integrity, in wisdom, or in meditation. And his experience just of meeting the Buddha face to face meant that before long he could practice until attaining enlightenment himself. So that is one example of how, a very dramatic example of how simply hearing a teaching that will put its finger on the fault or the suffering which you're having in life can really change things around so that your life goes in a much better and more positive direction after that. For today, I'll finish off with a few little announcements. you now know about the Thursday class. Some of you may also know about that there's a class every Tuesday as well, but generally it's a little bit shorter with just a 30-minute meditation, whereas on Thursdays the meditation is a little bit longer. I'd also like to announce that in March we are planning to hold, after a break of 2 years, an in-person retreat here at the center in Woking, meditation for Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, where you can stay over and keep 8 precepts while practicing meditation throughout that time. Anyone who's interested to see more details of that, you may or may not be able to see the link there, but it's you'll find a form that you can fill in online to sign up for that at the Dhammakaya London.co.uk website. And I believe there's a cost involved of £75 for the catering and meals that's provided during the retreat. A longer retreat of 2 weeks, it says a month there, but at a pinch it can be 2 weeks, for gentlemen, is that this year again, hopefully COVID will have gone away completely throughout Europe, and we'll be back to being able to have the ordination scheme, whereby you can have the chance to become a monk for a week at least, and possibly a month. Many of the gents here have participated in that in the past, but as again, COVID, we haven't done it since 2019, I think. For those of you who would like to meditate further at home, and I would encourage you to do this, there is an app which you can download onto your phone, whether it's iOS or Android, and there are a lot of audio tracks on that which will lead you through meditation with a timer that you can set for yourself. If you want to meditate for half an hour a day, but you've got a guidance of 20 minutes on that, then you can set a timer and it will finish off your meditation with a little gong sound or whatever. Also, every Saturday we get together with the whole of Europe in order to have a 1-hour meditation and teaching online, which is known as DMEU. That's between 7 and 8 every Saturday in British time. And Tuesday, 15th of October, we'll have a full moon ceremony here in place of the normal Tuesday meditation class, which will also be online, which will coincide with the Buddhist festival of Makapuja Day, when there's a lot of candle lighting in honor of the Buddha giving a teaching of the Ovada Patimokkha, which you know about, of course, to avoid evil, do good, and purify the mind. Yeah, that's the origin of that teaching, which is celebrated on the full moon of February. So that's part of the theme for the full moon meditation for February. Yes, indeed. So for me, that's all I'd like to say for today, but I don't know if there's any questions, comments, or feedback which anyone would like to share at this point.
All right, so anyone, So anyone has the Q&A sections, anyone have the questions during the meditation techniques or the Buddhist topic talks, you can raise your hands up and ask directly to the monk. Okay, seems like anyone has no questions, so let's come to the end of this event. May I invite everyone to pay respect to the teaching monk by bowing 3 times. Bow, bow, bow.
So may all of you be endowed with happiness, success, and prosperity in life, and as a result of hearing tonight's teaching, have clarity and inspiration for cultivating aim in life on the 3 levels I've mentioned, now and forevermore.
May everyone pay homage to the Lord Buddha by bowing 3 times. Bow. Bow. Bow.